Mark Parker thought it was just another rainy Thursday night when he dropped his wife, Sarah, at the Seattle airport for her business trip. She kissed him quickly, adjusted her black blazer, and walked toward the sliding doors without looking back. Behind him, 8-year-old Evan sat quietly in his booster seat, clutching his dinosaur backpack. Mark didn't think much of it until he started driving toward the I-5 exit. Suddenly, Evan's small hand gripped his arm. Not a tap, but a tight, trembling hold that made Mark flinch. "Dad, please don't go home tonight," Evan whispered, voice shaking. Mark looked into the rearview mirror and saw fear, real fear, in his son's wide eyes. At first, Mark tried to brush it off. "Buddy, it's late. You're probably tired," he said softly, trying to calm the panic he heard in Evan's breathing. But Evan shook his head hard. "Dad, this time you have to believe me. Please." The words this time cut deeper than Mark expected. He remembered the warnings he had ignored, the strange car that parked near their house 3 nights in a row, the phone call Evan overheard at 2 a.m. that Mark dismissed as a dream, the shadows that made Evan afraid to sleep. Now, hearing his son's voice crack with terror, Mark felt something shift inside him. "Okay," he said gently. "I believe you." Evan exhaled shakily, tears shining in his eyes. "Really, Dad?" "Yes. I'm sorry I didn't before." Instead of driving home, Mark pulled onto a side road and turned off the lights, his engineer mind racing. Rain tapped softly on the windshield while Evan curled against the window, still trembling. "Evan," Mark asked in a low voice, "what did you hear?" The boy swallowed hard. "Mom talked to someone on the phone. She said she'd leave a key, and that the bad men would come tonight." Mark's chest tightened. "A key to what?" Evan whispered. "Our house." Mark's hands tightened around the steering wheel as fear and disbelief mixed in his stomach. "Are you sure?" Evan nodded quickly. "Dad, Mom told someone. They'll think it's an accident." Mark felt the blood drain from his face. Suddenly, nothing felt normal anymore. Mark parked beneath 2 tall oaks across from their house and turned off the engine. "We're not going inside," he whispered. "We're just watching." Hours passed slowly. Evan dozed off, and Mark stared at the blue front door he had built with his own hands. Everything looked normal until 10:45 p.m., when a dark van with no headlights crept down the street. It stopped directly in front of their home. 2 men in black hoodies stepped out. No hesitation. No confusion. They moved like professionals. Mark whispered, "Who are they?" Evan's voice cracked. "They're the ones Mom talked to." Then Mark saw one of the men pull something from his pocket. A key. His key. The deadbolt clicked. They walked inside like they owned the place. Mark reached for his phone to call 911, but the 2 men moved too fast. Within seconds he smelled chemicals. Sharp, unmistakable. "No, no," he muttered, eyes widening. Flames erupted inside the house almost instantly, burning too quickly to be accidental. Glass shattered outward as orange fire roared through the rooms Evan had played in since he was a baby. "Dad!" Evan whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks. Mark pulled him close. "You saved us," he said, voice breaking. "If we were inside, we'd be dead." Sirens screamed in the distance as the men calmly walked back to the van and disappeared into the night. Mark watched the home he designed burn to the ground, knowing in his gut the truth. Sarah, his wife of 15 years, had planned all of it. Mark held Evan tightly as firefighters fought the flames, but he knew the house was already gone. Every memory they built was turning into ashes before their eyes. Evan's sobs shook his small body. "Dad, why would Mom do this?" Mark swallowed hard, unable to answer. He didn't want to believe Sarah could be part of something so evil. But the way those men used a key, the timing, Evan's warnings, everything pointed to one terrifying truth. From a distance, Mark saw more cars arriving, neighbors rushing out, lights flashing, people shouting. He leaned close to his son and whispered, "We're staying hidden. No one can know we're alive yet." As the fire trucks surrounded the burning home, Mark pulled away slowly and parked a block away, hidden in shadows. His hands shook as he dialed an old number. A number his late father once told him to use only if he was in serious danger. When a woman answered, her voice was strong and calm. "This is Attorney Grace Turner." Mark breathed shakily. "Grace, my name is Mark Parker. My father, John Parker, told me to call you if I ever needed help he couldn't give." There was a pause, then Grace's voice softened. "I remember John. What happened, Mark?" And for the first time that night, Mark told another adult the truth. Grace didn't gasp. She didn't doubt him. She simply said, "Bring your son somewhere safe. We meet at 9 a.m. From the dark street corner, Mark watched as an Uber pulled up to the ruins of the house. Sarah stepped out wearing heels and a long black coat, her hair pulled back neatly like earlier. The moment she saw the burning home, she dropped to her knees screaming, "My husband! My son! Oh God, no!" Her voice echoed through the whole neighborhood. Evan whispered, "Dad, she's pretending." Mark felt sick as he watched her sob into a police officer's chest. The fire chief told her they hadn't found any bodies. Mark saw it, the split-second panic in her eyes, the fear that they weren't dead. She was terrified her plan had failed. Mark pulled out Evan's smartwatch, typed a message and hit send. "Hey honey, Evan and I grabbed dinner. Be home soon." Across the street, Sarah's phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She froze, staring at the screen. Her knees buckled. Her face drained of color. She spun around wildly as if expecting Mark to appear from the darkness. That was when Mark whispered, "She knows we're alive." Evan held onto his father's sleeve. "Dad, what do we do now?" Mark squeezed his hand. "We stay quiet. We find proof. And we don't go to the police until we have something they can't ignore." Mark drove to a cheap motel near the airport. The room smelled like stale smoke, but right now it felt safer than anything else in the world. Evan collapsed on the small bed and fell asleep immediately, exhaustion finally catching him. Mark sat at the bathroom doorway holding the small business card Grace had given him years ago. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "If you ever need someone who won't back down, call Grace Turner." Tears pricked Mark's eyes. "Dad, I wish you were here," he whispered. Then he wiped his face, straightened his shoulders, and prepared to find the truth. At 2 a.m., Mark returned to the airport parking garage. His heart pounded as he approached Sarah's silver Honda. Using a spare key she didn't know he kept, he opened the door. A faint smell of chemical accelerant drifted out, the same smell from the fire. "No, no," Mark whispered, searching the car. Under the passenger seat, he found a small burner phone. When he powered it on, the battery was low, but one name was saved. Jay. He opened the messages, and the truth hit him so hard he had to grip the steering wheel. "She planned it," he whispered, voice breaking. "She planned all of it." Message after message revealed everything. "Sarah, I can't live this lie anymore. I want to be with you, Jason. Jason, insurance money. Fresh start. Sarah, what about Evan? Jason, collateral damage. Sarah, you're right." Mark felt like the air had been punched out of him. His wife, his partner, had called their son collateral damage. His hands trembled as he photographed every message. He found a bank receipt, proof of a $50,000 cash withdrawal. In the trunk, he discovered his engineering blueprints for their gas system, covered in Sarah's handwriting. "Sabotage here. Blame design flaw." She had studied his work not to understand him, but to weaponize it. By sunrise, Mark drove back to the motel with the burner phone, bank slip, insurance papers, and photos. When Evan woke up, he found his father sitting on the edge of the bed, face pale but determined. "Dad, did you find something?" Mark nodded slowly. "Yes, buddy. We have proof. Real proof." Evan crawled into his father's arms. "Are we gonna be okay?" Mark kissed the top of his head. "Yes, 'cause you warned me. And now we fight back." Evan held onto him tightly, as if afraid Mark might disappear. "I'm glad you believed me," he whispered. "Me too," Mark murmured. Me too. At 9 a.m., Mark and Evan walked into Grace Turner's office. The walls were covered with legal certificates and photos of families she had helped. Grace, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, studied the evidence spread across her desk. When she reached the text about Evan being collateral damage, she exhaled slowly. Your wife is dangerous, Mark. He nodded. I know. Grace leaned forward. This is strong, but her lawyer will claim the texts were faked. We need her voice. We need her to confess. Mark shook his head. She thinks Evan and I are dead. Grace smiled faintly. Exactly. And that's how you'll catch her. Detective Sam Morris entered the room next, a tall, calm man with tired eyes. He reviewed the evidence silently. 25 years on this job, Sam said softly. I've seen monsters. But hiring someone to burn your own kid, that's evil. He looked at Mark. We're going to help you. But we need a confession. We'll wire you. You'll meet Sarah in a public place. My team will be undercover around you. Evan grabbed Mark's sleeve. Dad. Will you be safe? Mark knelt in front of him. Yes, promise. And I'm doing this for you. Grace typed a message pretending to be a fire investigator. Mrs. Parker remains found. Need to discuss insurance details. Meet tomorrow 10 a.m. at Harbor Coffee, Capitol Hill. They waited. 2 minutes felt like an hour. Then Sarah replied quickly. I'll be there. Please hurry. I need to know about my family. Mark stared at the screen, heart pounding. Sam nodded. She's desperate. Desperate people talk. Grace looked at Mark. Tomorrow you rise from the dead. Evan squeezed his hand. I'll be waiting when you come back, he whispered. Mark hugged him tightly. You're the bravest kid I know. Saturday morning came cold and bright. Mark walked into Harbor Coffee at 9:45 a.m., wire taped under his shirt. His hands trembled as he ordered a coffee. Detective Sam's voice whispered through the earpiece. Audio clear. Officers in position. Mark sat at a window table, staring at the door. His heart thudded in his chest. At exactly 10:02, Sarah entered. She paused, scanning for the fire investigator. Then her eyes landed on Mark. Everything inside her seemed to freeze. Her face turned white. The cup in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor. Mark, she whispered, voice trembling. Sarah walked toward him slowly, like she was approaching a ghost. She collapsed into the chair. You're alive. Mark folded his arms. Disappointed. She swallowed hard. Mark, I don't understand. They told me that we were dead. That's what you wanted. Sarah shook her head violently. No, I would never. We saw them, Mark snapped. 2 men. With a key. A key you gave them. The color drained from Sarah's face. Mark, listen. He pulled out the photos and texts. What is this then? Insurance money. Fresh start. Collateral damage. Her eyes dropped to the table. She didn't deny any of it. For a long moment, Sarah stared at the printed texts. Then she laughed. Soft, bitter, hollow. I underestimated you, she said quietly. I thought you'd die in your sleep. Mark felt something inside him break. Why? Why would you do this to your own family? Sarah leaned forward, voice ice cold. Because I wasted 15 years being your wife. I was bored. Invisible. Jason made me feel alive. And we needed money. Mark's jaw clenched. And Evan. Sarah shrugged. He was part of your life, not mine. I wasn't dragging a child into my new beginning. Her voice was emotionless. He had to go. Mark stood abruptly, chair scraping across the floor. You were going to burn our son alive, he shouted. The cafe fell silent. Sarah stood too, meeting his rage with her own. Fine, she yelled. You want the truth. I hired them. I left the key. I studied your designs so the fire would look like your mistake. And yes, Evan had to die. Every customer stared at her in horror. Mark opened his jacket, revealing the wire. "Detective, you got that?" Sam's voice came through instantly. Every word. The barista pulled off his apron and flashed a badge. Officers closed in around Sarah. "Sarah Parker," Sam said calmly. "You're under arrest." She glared at Mark as they cuffed her. "We could have had a new life." Mark shook his head. "Not one built on our son's grave." Sarah's screams echoed through the cafe as officers guided her outside, but Mark didn't move. He stood frozen, chest tight, watching the woman he once loved transform into a stranger wearing his wife's face. "You set me up," she shouted as Detective Sam closed the cruiser door. Mark didn't answer. He simply whispered, "No, you set yourself up." When the police cars finally pulled away, his legs gave out. Sam caught his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Mark. Your son is safe because of you." Mark nodded weakly, tears burning behind his eyes. Later that afternoon, Mark returned to the motel where Evan sat anxiously on the bed, swinging his legs. The moment he saw his father, he jumped down and ran into his arms. "Dad, did it work?" Mark hugged him tightly, burying his face in Evan's hair. "It worked, buddy," she confessed. "We're safe now." Evan clung to him, trembling with relief. "We don't have to hide anymore." Mark lifted his chin. "No, we can finally go home. Or what's left of it." Evan nodded slowly, then wiped his eyes. "I don't care about the house. I just want you." Mark's heart cracked but also healed at the same time. The weeks that followed were a blur of court hearings, statements, meetings with lawyers, and endless questions. Mark testified about the night of the fire, about the texts, about Sarah's confession. Evan sat beside him holding a stuffed dinosaur, too young to fully understand but old enough to know fear. The trial lasted 4 long weeks. Sarah sat at the defense table every day, staring straight ahead without emotion. When the prosecution played the audio recording of her admitting everything, the entire courtroom gasped. Evan leaned into Mark and whispered, "She really said that?" Mark nodded. "Yes. And now everyone knows." Sarah's lawyer tried every possible excuse: stress, temporary insanity, emotional breakdown, but none of it could erase the facts. The burner phone, the bank withdrawal, the blueprints she sabotaged, the texts calling Evan collateral damage. Jason, her lover, testified too, desperate for a lighter sentence. "She planned everything," he told the court. "I just helped." Sarah glared at him with a coldness that sent chills through the room. One of the arsonists testified as well, describing how she left the key and paid them in cash. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty on all counts. Mark didn't feel joy when the judge read the sentence: 25 years with no chance of early release. He didn't feel victory. He didn't even feel anger. He felt empty, like grief had carved a hollow place inside him where love used to be. As Sarah was led away in handcuffs, she turned once and looked at him. Mark expected rage or regret, but what he saw instead was relief. Relief that she didn't have to pretend anymore. She whispered, "I hate you, Mark." He whispered back, "I know. You always did." 6 months later, Mark and Evan started rebuilding their lives. They moved into a small 1-story home in Ballard. Evan helped choose it. "I want a house without gas," he said firmly. "All electric." Mark agreed. He took extended leave from work, then eventually quit Boeing entirely. Too many memories. Too much guilt. He took a teaching job at the University of Washington, teaching engineering safety. How systems fail, how to build protections, how to anticipate malicious use. His students thought he was intense. They didn't know the reason behind his warnings. Evan started 4th grade at his new school. He was quieter now, more cautious. He checked the locks every night before bed and slept with a small nightlight shaped like a rocket ship. Therapy helped. Slowly, the nightmares faded from every night to once a week. Mark's sessions helped too. He learned to breathe again, learned to forgive himself for missing the signs. One afternoon, after a therapy session, Evan asked him softly, "Dad, was Mom always like that?" Mark knelt and held his hands. "I don't know, buddy. But her choices were hers. Not yours. Not mine." 3 years passed. Evan grew taller, stronger, and happier. He joined a basketball team, made new friends, and started talking about wanting to be a civil engineer. "I want to build bridges, Dad," he said proudly. "Bridges that connect people." Mark smiled, feeling proud and heartbroken at the same time. "You'll build good ones," he said. On weekends, they went hiking, cooked together, watched movies, and rebuilt their father-son bond piece by piece. Every laugh Evan shared felt like a victory. Every smile was a reminder that they survived. One quiet Saturday morning, Mark sat on the porch sipping coffee while Evan played basketball in the driveway with his best friend. The sun warmed the wooden steps. Birds sang in the trees. Evan ran over for water, his cheeks flushed. "Dad, can I go to Connor's house after this?" Mark nodded. "Text me when you get there." Evan rolled his eyes. "Dad, I'm 11, not a baby." Mark smiled gently. "And I'm your dad who almost lost you. Humor me." Evan laughed and jogged back to the court. For a moment, Mark simply watched him, alive, safe, thriving. After Evan left with his friend, Mark sat alone with his thoughts. He wondered if Sarah ever thought about them in prison. Wondered if she understood the damage she caused. Part of him wanted answers, but another part already knew they wouldn't matter. Some wounds don't need explanations. They need distance. Later that evening, Evan returned wearing a borrowed jersey. "Dad," he asked quietly, "do you ever think about Mom?" Mark took a slow breath. "Every day," he admitted. "But not the way I used to." Evan tilted his head. "Do you hate her?" Mark shook his head. "No, I hate what she did. But hate takes energy I'd rather spend on you." Evan hesitated before speaking. "Dad, I got a letter." Mark froze. "From who?" Evan looked down. "From Mom. From prison." Mark's heart tightened. "Do you want to read it?" Evan shrugged. "Part of me does. Part of me doesn't care anymore." Mark sat beside him. "Whatever you choose, I'll support you. And Evan, you don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness. Not answers. Not time." Evan leaned his head on Mark's shoulder. "Did you forgive her?" Mark closed his eyes. "No, but I let her go. There's a difference." Summer came warm and peaceful. Mark and Evan took weekend trips, visited friends, and built new memories that weren't stained by the past. One evening after dinner, Evan looked up suddenly. "Dad, thanks for believing me that night at the airport." Mark froze, throat tight. "Evan, I will always believe you. Always." Evan smiled softly. "That's why we're okay now." Mark pulled him into a hug, realizing how close he came to losing everything. Evan's bravery had saved their lives. Love had saved their future. Years later, Mark found himself sitting in the auditorium at Evan's high school graduation. Parents cheered around him, cameras flashed, and music played. When Evan walked across the stage to receive his diploma, Mark felt tears slide silently down his cheeks. Evan looked into the crowd, found him, and smiled with that same brave smile from the night of the fire. After the ceremony, Evan hugged him tightly. "Dad, I'm going to study engineering. Bridge building, like I said." Mark laughed through his tears. "I always knew you would." As life continued, the fire became a distant scar, a story of survival rather than destruction. Mark wrote articles about safety systems, became a respected professor, and mentored dozens of students. Evan built friendships, joined clubs, and grew into a kind young man who looked nothing like the frightened boy from that night. Sometimes people asked Mark why he never remarried. He had a simple answer. "I already have all the love I need. My son is enough." And he meant it. On a bright fall morning, Mark sat on the porch again, now older, wiser, and finally at peace. Evan, now a tall, confident teenager, stepped outside with his backpack. Heading to study group, he said. Mark nodded. Be safe. Text when you arrive. Evan smirked. Still checking locks. Mark smiled. Always. Evan walked down the street, sunlight on his shoulders, alive because a frightened 8-year-old had trusted his instincts. Mark whispered to the wind. We made it. And they had. They carried scars, yes, but they carried victory too. Because in the end, evil didn't win. Love did. And a father who finally listened to his son saved both their lives.